Hi, I'm Felix Warren from First Crying Out Loud. I've been working with spirits for about 20 years now, and I like to teach other people how the heck it is that I do what I do. Um, Mostly because people keep on asking me, how the heck is it that you do what you do, Felix? So one of the questions that I'm asked the most is, how do I perceive spirits, and how can other people learn to do it better, or learn to do it at all? And this is actually a difficult question to answer because everyone perceives spirits a little bit differently, which is contrary to what Hollywood and a lot of other resources would have you believe. There are a lot of books, people, just general society beliefs out there that say that, oh, someone who hears and perceives spirits hears them perfectly clear as a bell, um, can hear them all the time, can hear them the same way that they hear other people talking to them, and these are rarely true. Also, these assumptions don't really cover a lot of the different ways that spirits can be perceived that are not often talked about, and that's rather frustrating because some of them are very interesting and also kind of easy. So, I'm going to talk to you today about a few things about spirit perception. I do not have the entire how to do everything in this video. For one, that would take too long, and for two, I do teach classes on this, and if you check out the video's description, you can see a link to where you can sign up for a help forum on how to do all the things that it is that I kind of do, and also general help with spirit stuff. So check out that link if you want further info that's more in depth than I can give on a YouTube video. Alright, so getting down to business. Um, the first thing you've got to know about spirit perception is that it is layered on top of our actual perceptions. How each of us perceives the world is a little bit different. We each have differently attuned senses. Some of us are better at some senses than others. Some of us don't have certain senses. Um, and some of us have not been tuning into certain senses enough to be able to use them properly yet. So it's important to consider that this isn't just a gift, and some people have it and some people don't. Some level of spirit perception is available to everyone, like every creature and possibly non living things that are on this planet. I just have trouble asking some non living things what it is that they perceive. Although, um, communication with objects in an animist fashion is one of the things you can do with spirit perception, and is an ability that some people have. So, the first thing you need to think about is how you use your regular senses, and don't think about stuff that's psychic. Because thinking about stuff that's psychic first, when you don't really have a grasp of just even your regular senses, is kind of jumping ahead of yourself. You may be skipping a few things that are actually very helpful and useful to you. So, I have an article on how each of the senses can be used for spirit perception, and I've linked it in the video's description so you can read that in depth. I'm just going to go over a few key points in it. Um, Many people believe that if someone sees spirits, they see them like visually with their eyes, like in a literal fashion, like that looks like another person who's in the room exactly, and that's actually pretty rare. Um, some people can do that. Some people can do that some of the time, and some people only do that when they're on like drugs. Um, I myself have only had that happen in a literal fashion when I was on Oregon's wonderful legal medical marijuana. So, um, otherwise, without aids like that, and that doesn't even happen all of the time, I can't visually see spirits that accurately the way that some people do. So that's an important thing to keep in mind, that it's not something you should expect to happen. Very dramatic, Hollywood-style types of spirit interaction are not things that you should expect to be guaranteed to happen, nor should you consider, like, that's the goal that I have to get to, because that's unrealistic. Now, if it happens, it's great. If it happens way too much to you, it's something to mitigate. But otherwise, don't get hung up on, you know, reenacting some sort of movie. We're going to be visited by a cat because you have been hearing her in the background, and she likes to be in every single one of my videos. So we're just going to remedy that by having a cat on screen. One thing important to keep in mind is that your pets will often perceive spirits. Um, my cat does, and often she'll just cue me in, like, "Hey, there's someone around. Could you talk to them? Cause that'd be great." Um, some spirits will actually upset pets, and not necessarily because they're bad spirits or anything. It's just that the pets themselves don't really like those spirits being around. If you have like a dog barking or something, or otherwise like animals not really reacting well to spirits being around, you might want to consider just calming the animal down and acting like you have a guest over, like the same way that you would get them used to a physical guest being over, because that can actually calm their nerves and help them get used to things. But paying attention to your pets and animals and the environment around you is very important whenever you're looking for spirit perceptions, because that can be a big clue. A lot of times, spirits get my attention by basically making my cat meow, which is very annoying because then she annoys me, but it's not her fault. But they think it's funny. So, that's that. I guess she's going to be a guest for the rest of this video. You have been blessed. So, your regular senses, like I said, visual might not happen literally, but you will often get glimpses of spirits either out of the corner of your eye, like seems like you might have seen something but you're not really sure, or you get them in your mind's eye. We call that imagination, but imagination can encompass so many concepts that I prefer the mind's eye, because it tells you exactly, like, that mental visual that you get of things. And some people don't get a mind's eye. They don't perceive things that way. Some people get way different than other people's mind's eye. So this varies from person to person, exactly how you're going to perceive. And the thing that you should be paying attention to most is, how do I perceive things? How is it, like, what is the normal way that stuff comes in through my senses? Because if you know that, even for mundane things, then whenever spirit stuff starts coming in, you'll be able to understand what's coming in a lot better, because you'll understand your normals. That is the most important thing to pay attention to. Just like, when I was talking about pets reacting, you know your pet's normal reactions to things. So if they're acting strange, but you think, well, if another person was in the room, would they be acting normal? Would this behavior be considered normal for them? And the answer is yes, then that's a clue that there might be a spirit around. Sometimes there might be a spirit that's, to their mind, similar to a skittering animal that they'd like to chase, and that's why they're chasing nothing. So it can get pretty funny. There are some spirits that actually like to just play around with cats or other animals that like to chase things. So that's great. This is my cat's favorite video, apparently. So you consider your regular senses. Hearing is the same way. Whenever I sense a spirit talking, I don't typically hear them like I would hear another person talking to me. That will only happen at liminal times. So like I said before about like seeing a spirit out of the corner of your eye, or seeing in your mind's eye, you might blink and maybe see a spirit for a little bit, but then it's gone. Or you're in the shadows or something. You're in a liminal space, and spirit perception increases in liminal spaces. Spaces where it's not quite one thing or the other. You're on a border. You're in a gateway. And that's typically where spirits are most strongly going to be perceived by us, because they're in the spirit realm and we're here in the physical realm. If we're in a liminal space between the two, or any kind of liminal space, the two are bridged more easily. So with hearing, I don't often hear spirits in a very literal way, but the one time that I do is when I'm in that state where I am about to fall asleep and I'm almost asleep, and then suddenly I just like hear one of them and I'm like, whoa, what was that? And then I'm like wide awake and I can't hear them anymore because I'm out of that liminal zone. I was in that sort of trancey state between waking and sleeping where I was going from one to the other, and in that liminal state I was able to hear. It's really hard to keep yourself there on purpose. That can be a skill that you hone, or that can lead to some other types of, say, dream journeying or astral journeying. But paying attention to how your senses are whenever you're in a liminal space or a liminal time is, very important. That's one reason why special music to kind of get you into a mood, even just like trancing itself, doing chants, being in a spiritually charged place, certain added effects such as lighting candles or incense, anything to kind of get you into the zone. You're walking into that liminal space where it's easier for your senses to pick up on the astral. Um, so that's hearing and sight. I want to go a little bit further into hearing because that gets more complicated than just, oh, well, when you're trancing, sometimes you can actually hear them. We don't always, like, I can't be trancing all the time. Sometimes I want to talk to spirits while I'm driving. And I don't want to be trancing while I'm driving for really obvious reasons. So I like to keep my car on the road and not run into other cars. It's really great. So if I want to perceive spirits while not trancing, then I need to be able to pick up on what they're saying while it's not as concrete. And this is where you start to pick up on your actual thought processes. Because often when people say they're hearing spirits, they're not hearing with their ears, they are perceiving in their thoughts what spirits are saying. This gets into a very difficult zone because it's essentially entirely imagination. And people don't always like that. It's not a very certain thing. It's very hard to prove. If it's all in your head, it's literally all in your head. It's not something you can record or, have a photo of. You can't just, prove to someone else, oh, this is the stuff that was in my head. That means that they definitely were there. It's much more frustrating that you don't have something tangible. It's all just thoughts. But you need to start thinking of your thoughts as more tangible than you think they are. Thoughts are real things. They are in your head. You're experiencing them. They are the glue that's keeping your entire brain together. Thoughts comprise your entire experience in this world. They're very important, and they're your entire life. So start getting familiar with how you think. Because once a spirit starts talking to you, the way you're going to be able to tell it's a spirit talking is because it doesn't sound like how you think. If people want to know what's the difference between, oh, that maybe that's just me thinking that as opposed to a spirit communicating that, often it's simply a matter of, well, how do you often think of things? What kind of words do you usually come up with? What sort of speech do you usually use? What's likely for you to even think or say in a certain circumstance? Because if it's just, kind of from out of nowhere, communication that's not typical to you, then that's possibly a spirit. It's also good to do some research on things like intrusive thoughts, and also other mental health conditions to be sure that you're experiencing something that is spirit communication and not something that's basically your brain screwing with you. Because you can have both. Like, intrusive thoughts are something that's actually very common to everyone. And some people experience them much more than others, and it requires either mental health treatment or therapy. Or simply just keeping yourself in check. Like, you get used to how it is that you actually are supposed to think, and so when intrusive thoughts start happening, you're able to say, that's an intrusive thought, haha, I caught you. What's great is that if you're able to do that, you're probably also able to examine whenever spirits are talking to you, because you're like, haha, that's a spirit, that's not me, I caught you. And I like to kind of put it that way because a lot of people say, oh, well, if you have a mental health condition, you can't talk to spirits. You should never talk with spirits. You shouldn't do that kind of communication because it's too dangerous. And it's like, well, guess what? They talk to me anyway, so I can't really make it stop. Um, it's like people kind of have this assumption that if you have a mental health condition, then spirits will never talk to you. And that's just not the truth. So if you do have any kind of mental health conditions, and they're quite common, just having like depression or something. I mean, depression is so common, especially now with the world being like it is, that not being able to work with spirits because you've got a mental health condition is basically eliminating quite a lot of people from the spectrum, and also it would encourage people not to get their mental health treated. So anyway, that's kind of a segue, but it's important to think about whenever it comes to spirits coming into your thoughts. Um, I've floated the question to other people before: how do we tell the difference between a spirit communicating to you and, say, delusional thinking or actual hallucinations? And some of the replies I've gotten, I've disagreed with, because sometimes people give the answer of, well, a spirit is never going to give you instructions to hurt you. And so if you get instructions to hurt you, then that's not spirit communication, that's mental health. And I'm like, actually, some spirits are like fucking assholes. So the important thing is, if a spirit tells you to hurt yourself, or if anything tells you to hurt yourself, not to do it, because that's not something you should do. Figuring out whether it's a spirit or whether that's a mental health thing is something you can examine later. The important thing is, like, just because a spirit tells you to do it or even says it doesn't mean it's true and doesn't mean it's something that you should be doing. Whether a spirit is telling you violent things that are bad for you is actually an evaluation of whether you should be working with that spirit or whether you should be kicking them the hell out. So, as to how to tell spirits communication apart from mental health conditions, I find that people who have extended mental health conditions, as they learn about those mental health conditions, often learn the norms of those mental health conditions. So you need to learn the norms of your mental health conditions, and then see whether this communication that you're getting is falling within the norms of that, or if it's falling into the norms of something else, which means it's likely it's spirit communicating. That's kind of a difficult answer to give because there's no yes no, there's no concrete answer, there's no device that's going to like go off and tell you, oh yes, the spirit meter says that's definitely a spirit talking to you right now, and not a bad thought telling you that you shouldn't eat today. Um, that sucks, but brain stuff sucks. So sorry, I don't have a really good solid go to on that. The thing that will determine most whether whether it's real spirit communication is experience. And this is actually the answer that people don't like because they kind of want to go to of like, well, is it normal? Is this happening or not? Like they want that answer right now, and the problem is that you don't get that answer until you've done enough work to get an idea of what is normal. Um, and it doesn't take as long as you might think. You might think, oh my gosh, well, Felix has been doing this for 20 years. Is that how long it's going to take for me to figure out whether this is actually a ghost? Um, no, I would give it like a couple weeks or a month of just continuous work. Like, keep on checking in with that and seeing what it is. And the great thing is, if it turns out you have a mental health condition, then you probably will find it earlier because you've been self-examining for quite a while, and you'll know your mental norms. Um, so this is healthy for anyone to do. That's pretty much it when it comes to spirit perception in your thoughts. I will say that spirit perception in your thoughts can be very weird. Sometimes they will not have a vocabulary for exactly what it is they're trying to say. Sometimes they're not speaking in a full, complete English sentence. In fact, often they're not. You'll notice in your thoughts, whenever you're just thinking of things, you do not often give a very good in English or whatever your native language is narrative of exactly what's going on throughout the day. You're using a lot of shortcuts. You're just using kind of like um, just a word for what it is that you're doing. Like, I need food. You're not going to see like, I need to go into the fridge and get some food right now. You're just thinking fridge, food, microwave. If a spirit communicates to you like that, then you kind of know to put in some grammar. Sometimes they are very particular about grammar. Sometimes they use really, really weird words, and you're like, what does that mean? So it can all get really variable. So that's kind of a baseline for spirit communication and what to start paying attention to. It can get kind of daunting when it comes to examining your thoughts and mental health stuff. If you have an active mental health condition that you're managing right now, and it's all you can do to manage that condition, it may be that you want to just like focus on that until you feel comfortable managing also spirit communication. But a lot of times spirits are communicating to us and we didn't make it happen or anything. They just are, and they're not going to wait for us to go get a prescription for what it is that we're doing or to see a therapist. They're just going to keep talking at us. If that's the case, then basically you can kind of put it in your head, well, that might be a spirit. Um, Continue to work on your self care and continue to make progress on your mental health, but just kind of make a note like, hey, I'm probably gonna see if I can talk with that spirit at some point. That would be great. Um, Sometimes spirits can seem really urgent. That you'll just get this extreme sense of urgency. A lot of times that's simply because they've been trying to get our attention for a really long time, and they're like, "Are you ever gonna like notice me, senpai? Notice me, senpai. Doki doki." So, if it's to that point, they may be impressing a certain sense of urgency, and they may be making you impatient at that point. It's a good thing to just kind of acknowledge, just even say out loud, not while anybody else is around, because you're going to seem kind of cray cray. Um, hey, spirit, or hey, whoever's there, I understand that you're trying to get my attention. I can't quite deal with this yet. Give me some time, and I will get to where I can start communicating with you. But I am not blatantly ignoring you anymore. I just have a lot to deal with, and I know that seems hard from where you are. Because spirits often don't understand how much it is that we're dealing with. They think that we're really weird. I know that humans often think that spirits are really weird, if they even acknowledge that spirits are existing at all. But to spirits, we're like kind of the wackos. We don't notice everything that they're doing. We go about our lives completely ignoring huge parts of the world. We seem to go out of our way to do things that have no point, such as day jobs, um, and paying taxes and obeying stoplights. There's just like a lot of arbitrary things that humans seem to do that spirits don't really have any conception of why we even are going through that kind of bother. So it helps to understand that spirits are often confused about us, and if you just kind of make it clear, like, look, I know that I am doing seems confusing, but I actually do have to do it. If you can just be patient and let me get this stuff done, then I promise you that we'll get to a place where we can meet on things and talk to each other about that stuff. So, yeah, I think that's generally a very helpful approach to have. So, this video's got kind of gone all over the place. There are a lot of topics it comes to whenever it comes to spirit communication, and I've really only touched the tip of the iceberg. So, if you want in-depth guidance, if you want to directly ask me questions, and want specific advice on a complex situation, then I really do suggest my spirit advice forums, because that's what they're there for. If not, you can drop me a question over email or in the comments. I just can't guarantee that I'll be able to answer what it is that you're looking for, because if it takes more than a couple of minutes of my time, I actually do kind of have to charge money, because my time's very limited, and I have actual spirits that I work with that kind of have a priority on my time. And that's a lot of why I charge, is because they're basically like, hey, you need to start valuing your time because we value your time. So that's a little bit of insight into what it is that I work with when it comes to spirits on my end. Anyway, feel free to check out my website, Merkaba Party Van, and see the spirit work help articles that I have there, because I have quite a lot there. And see you around online. All right. Bye.